Hey, and thanks for joining us for today's episode of Feng Shui It. We have an amazing guest in the studio today, Jamin Van Dillen, and we're going to talk about some amazing work that he's doing with music and with sound. But before we get started on that, I want you to make sure and hit that subscribe button. That way you can always make sure you get updates and any videos that we release so that you can live your best version of you, all right? So thank you so much for coming into the studio today and talking with me. I have been quite a fan of yours since I received my beats, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'm jumping ahead because I'm so excited about my product. But we're going to first start off by talking about your background, because I feel like your background really sets the tone for what it is that you do now, and it kind of explains how you got to this point in your career. So welcome, and let's get started.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. So tell me about your background. How in the world did you get started in music in the first place? Like, where did music come into your life, or was there ever a time in your life you didn't know music?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, it really started when I was at a very young age. My father was a musician. He was an incredible musician. He could pick up any instrument, play anything. So there was always music around me. And then by the time I can really clearly remember my first experience with music where it like really struck me was actually when I was about 5 years old. I purchased a CD of Johnny Mathis. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's an older artist. And the music he sings is it's typically like sad and about heartbreak. And I remember listening to it at 5 years old alone and crying and just really like connecting emotionally and feeling that resonance from the music. And then with my father around, I was, just kind of surrounded by it. I would kind of mimic my father, and he'd play something, and I'd play it on the piano and just would pick up stuff. But I never really had the desire to play music like he did until I was older. But I always look up to my father. I loved him so much, and he'd come home, and I'd always want to hang out with him, but he would come home, and he had a stressful job, and he'd go straight into playing music, and that was like his release. So I was like bummed, but I like respected that he did that, and so I kind of started to create this love for music. And then I enjoyed also, like I loved rock. I love, Michael Jackson, funk. Like my brother started DJing when he was about 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I got, introduced to soul music, funk, hip hop, rock, dance. So I just had this kind of like very eclectic taste at a very young age. And I just always would so connect with the emotion behind it. And so, later on when I was about 12, my parents divorced, and it was really traumatic for me. And as I got older, I hardly saw my father at all, and I slowly started to get into playing the drums. And so by the time I was 17, I was like just started playing it. And then my father, he had throat cancer. And then later on, I found out that it like transferred to his lungs, and he was doing really bad. And so one day I was in school, and I got this phone call, and I knew something was wrong. Like it was just very strange. And it was a phone call from my mother, and she, like the teacher said, like, pack up your stuff, you're gonna be going home. So I just like, my heart was like pounding, and I walked out to the front of my school, and I see my older brother and my mother in my brother's car, and so we drove to go see my father, and that was the last time I ever saw him because he died right in front of us. And yeah, it was really hard for me. But the way after that I kind of dealt with the emotions was to play music, because I could kind of channel things through, and it was like my way of connecting with my father. So I started playing drums, and I was at the time in high school, and kind of went from this transition from going from the popular crowd to like listening to heavy metal and like, screw the system type thing, so I could get out this angst. And so I just kept playing drums, and then my brother was always into hip hop, and he started producing music on an MPC with these pads. And I was so much into the instrumentation piece of it, where I looked at that, I looked down upon that, and I was like, it's cool, but I was like, whatever,
right.
Like I want to play a real instrument.
I'm a real musician, right?
Yeah, so I would kind of poo-poo it a little bit, but then he kind of slowly transitioned from the MPC, the actual like unit, to computer software, and that's when, like one time I went over to my brother's house, and I was like just blown away by it, and it like really sucked me in, and I loved it. Like the first song I wrote was a techno song, and it was great because I can make music whenever I wanted to, and I didn't have to, like the band. I'd have a jealous girlfriend that was like, "You always go to band practice," you know, and then I'd be breaking up a fist fight between the guitar player and the bass player, and I was like, the computer doesn't argue with me or anything. This is amazing.
I can just make music.
Yeah, so I could just make music, and so I loved it, and it was just like my life. So I just started playing music and doing all these fun things, and never really thought anything of it. It was just like kind of a hobby, and you know, I had an old high school friend that was really into music, and it was kind of our way of bonding, and I loved it. And then slowly I started getting these opportunities to I'd be in the right place at the right time, and I would be at a restaurant, and Warren G was there, and I knew the owner, and the owner was like, "Yeah, do you want to sit next to him?" And I'm sitting next to Warren G eating a plate of lasagna.
Wow.
So just things like that kept happening, and so slowly, you know, it was like I would befriend them, and I would, you know, give them my CDs or my music, and before I knew it, you know, I'm like on a tour bus with Wu-Tang, and just
Oh, wow.
crazy stuff was transpiring, and I had opportunities, and you know, it just kind of just started really unfolding like organically, and all the while, you know, like I was doing it, but there's still like this kind of like empty piece inside of me that I was like kind of trying to fill with like, yeah, I'm cool now. Like, you know, my manager connected a deal, and I'm writing a song for Britney Spears now and Nicki Minaj, but it was like, there was still this kind of like egoic piece, and it just was like, there was some emptiness. And the deeper I got into it, you know, I get a call up from you know, like a big name rapper, and I show up to the studio, and it's like literally like I feel like I'm on gang territory, because there's like literally a gang there.
Right.
And I'm like really uncomfortable, and they're there, and they're like, where are you from, blood? Like they're punking me.
Right.
I'm like, what? I'm like from Orange County, California, like white collar. I'm like scared.
I just want to make music.
Yeah, and so, you know, it was just funny. So I'd put on my music, then all of a sudden they're like, damn, son, and they like would give me props, and it was cool, but I'd be surrounded by drugs and like gang activity, and they'd be degrading women and just stuff, and it just kind of starts to consume you the more you're around it, and so it just was like, it was hard on my soul, you know, and so I didn't like it, and I was getting more into my spiritual side and the personal development piece, which really helped free me to kind of see past that, and then, you know, kind of just trust, and like, all right, like I built this all up, and now I have to like walk away into something completely new that like I'm like scared shitless. Like it's like you know something your whole life, and now you're like going into something where people, you know, think you're weird, or it's frowned upon, or society thinks it's, you know, not right.
Right.
So I just made this decision to move to LA, to move from LA and kind of like walk away. And I had this other deal that was set that would like really take care of me for the rest of my life. And it was with good people too, but I just, something wasn't in alignment for me. So it was like, I put all that behind, and I moved to North Carolina, and I started, I lived in this loft right by this river, and I would be going out to the river, and I'd be doing these meditations, and it was just strange. Like I would like literally like lay, like there would be a rock submerged in the river, and I'd lay on the rock and like dip my head back, and it was almost like I was being baptized. There's like, it's hard to describe, but as I started doing that, I just started getting these weird ideas to like mess around with frequencies and like study binaural beats, and then I was studying, in that process, I started studying like ancient cultures and old tribes from thousands of years ago. And I just started realizing that like music and rhythms and stuff come from these ancient cultures, and they did it for a specific reason, for like healing.
Very calculated.
Yeah, like getting into states and stuff like that. So I just started messing around with it, and that's kind of how I came about doing this. And it just opened up this world, and then something told me to just, you know, start to give it away for free, because I like, you know, it was so new to me even. Like I understood when I looked at sound healing, I understood it because I knew the principles of sound and resonance and from doing music.
Right,
yeah,
right.
and then so I saw the sound healing, and I was like, oh, I could instantly connect dots. And so I started putting it together, and then I just started giving it away for free, and people were like, oh my God, this is amazing.
This is amazing. Do you know what you just gave me?
Yeah, they're like, and like, I kind of was like, I don't know, like, you know.
What did it do?
Yeah, I'm like, what happened?
Tell me about it.
Yeah,
Let me do a case study.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of evolved into everybody just going like, I want to help you. Like, so I had a copywriter, and then someone's like, I'm gonna connect you with this person, and like literally, like
The pieces just came together.
Yeah, it was just like a waterfall. I couldn't even stop it if I wanted. I'm like, okay, like, so it was just cool. So it's been very guided in this like transformational process, and that's kind of how it's.
And I want to interrupt you right here because you
Sure.
said something that was quite profound that I really want to drive home to my audience. And that is this idea of you always had this knowing. You
Sure.
always had in the back of your mind, as amazing as it was to live a fast life and hang out with all these really cool people and, you know, really have financial success, extreme financial success and security, there was still this yearning inside of you.
Right.
And I often talk about people's connection to God, to source, whatever name, the divine, whatever you want to call it, it's God. And this innate ability to detect that of which God wants us to do as our life path here on earth. And I love the fact that you were able to literally, at the drop of a dime, when it was like, okay, it's time, you know you're good at this, I need you to do something else, you listened.
Right.
You listened. And that was awfully risky because a lot of us have to get kind of tapped and tapped and tapped. I was one of those people. I got tapped a
Sure.
lot of times, and I kept going, but it'll be easier to do this.
Right.
And in fact, it wasn't easier. It actually was pretty difficult to go my route. So I love the fact in your story, early on, you knew this, you acknowledged it, and when it was time, you turned around and you said, sure, I'm willing to do what it is that's my job in this life, in this carnation. So beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so you had studied all of the science behind sound. You had studied how frequencies and sounds affect the body because sound healing is huge.
Sure.
I've done an episode on sound healing and how you can use it. I mean, from anything from healing broken bones, I mean, speeding up the time
Right,
from just
right.
frequency. And it makes sense because we're nothing but energy bodies. But I want to talk about these beats because
Sure.
I've experienced your beats and I've had some pretty profound experiences with your beats. I wasn't ready for that.
Sorry.
I mean,
Sorry.
sorry, not sorry, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, I knew it would be an amazing opportunity. I knew it would be something certainly that I would have in my toolbox for meditation because I'm huge about prayer and I'm huge about meditation. I feel like that's what keeps you grounded. That's what keeps you focused on the right path. But these beats are pretty amazing. I want to talk about what these beats are, first of all, in a very basic level, because this is a lot of
Sure.
science behind it. I mean,
Right.
so let's just talk about it on baseline. What are the beats? Because this is what we call them, the beats, right? Like, I mean, it's sound alchemy
Sure.
in essence, but the beats is these are beats that I had created for myself, and I'm going to let you talk about it. I'm not going to
Sure.
talk about it. I'm so excited about it. I'm taking over you telling me about the beats, but let's start off with what are these beats?
Okay, cool. So basically, it's a lot of people are familiar with binaural beats. So it's a derivative of that, but then I've added other stuff. So I guess we'll first start with the explanation of binaural beats. That was essentially created in the like mid 1800s by a Prussian physicist, and but it goes back even further, where the ancients knew that different rhythmic chanting, Tibetan bells,
Right.
different instruments would create different states. So essentially, like a low chanting, humming, Tibetan bells ringing, this oscillation would entrain the brain into different states. So we have, different brainwave states. So you have the delta, you have theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. And so it's a different array of, very like delta is a very deep sleep. And then theta is like a very deep meditation, like almost like a hypnosis trance-like state. And then the alpha it's still relaxed, but it's not as deep. And then the beta is kind of like a pretty focused, like it's kind of where like a lot of our analytical, like the crazy mind, I like to call it, is like you're thinking all these different thoughts. And then gamma is like super hyper and focused and really high cognitive focus on basically what you're doing. And it's also a super consciousness too, where it's interesting, the delta state is a state where you can get like amazing awareness and download, but you're like almost, you're asleep or like almost asleep essentially. Whereas the gamma state, you can get the same awarenesses, but you're in like a super, heightened focused state. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. So knowing that, the different beats are then created, like binaural beats are created to put one into that state. So it's like an assisted meditational, guide to help you get into the state faster, essentially. And the way it works is super interesting. So going back to when the Prussian physicist discovered it, what he discovered was when you take one frequency and one, so when you think of mono or stereo with sound equipment, stereo is left and right.
Right.
So we have the ability to mix left and right. So you put, let's say you put 100 hertz in one left ear and then 105 in the other. You hear that, you hear the two frequencies, but your brain interprets a third tone. So the third tone is the difference between the two. So if you have 105 in here, then 100 in the left ear.
The space in between.
Yeah, and so it's 5 hertz.
Right.
So that difference between the two will then dictate what brainwave state that it's going to entrain your brain to. So that's kind of the basis of binaural beats. And
The simple version.
Yeah,
Which is still pretty complex, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And most people don't even know that. So like that's what binaural beats do. So like if you were to just go and buy one, you would get something like that. And most people don't even know what they're getting. So then what I did is I was like, all right, that's cool, but now I want to add in custom frequencies, because what I did is in my personal development training, I learned that we store a lot of our negative emotions in our body parts. So doing research on Royal Raymond Rife, I learned that there's like each body part has a frequency. So I know the emotions that are tied to that frequency. So when someone fills out our product questionnaire, when they purchase it, they allude to the different things that they're going through, what they're struggling with. So I correlate that with like, okay, this is associated with this body part. So not only do they get the meditative binaural beat state, but then they're also able to work on what's happening for them specific. So it's like custom tailored, custom made to that person.
It's kind of like what your doctor does. When you say, I'm having a pain in my stomach, you might just be talking about your abdomen, but they know, oh, this is your gallbladder, or this is your appendix.
Absolutely,
like you're using the knowledge that you have to
Right.
really give a person a prescription of sound.
Absolutely,
in essence.
yeah.
Right. Okay. So one of the questions I have about the beats is that, of course, they're customized for whatever it is that I want to focus on in my meditation. Now, after I've passed through that period and I feel like I'm kind of elevated and I'm okay with that issue and I've worked through it, are my beats still good? Or do I need to find a new beat? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Yeah, absolutely. They're still good. I mean, I think most of the people, the things that they're going through, like it's typically has some sort of relevance like currently at that time, and then typically those areas are things that will not hurt you or it'll still be beneficial. I think, yeah, definitely if you've gone through and passed through it, it would be cool to like re-up and kind of, if you've like, oh, I wanted to create success and you have a ton of success with money, that's great. Still continue to use it because it's getting you in that state. And then if there's other things that arise, obviously, as you go through levels, then yeah, I would just absolutely like work on getting a new one and getting something else that makes sense.
And that was going to be my next question. Can I buy beats to work with at the same time that are working with various issues, or do I work with one beat at a time, reach a certain level, and then go to a different beat for a different issue?
Yeah, you can use them at any time, and really, I'm a really proponent on having the person really experience them and feel them for themselves, because what we make and what we create, people have so many different experiences with them. So I don't think that there's any like right or wrong way. Like you could use them more or less, or at certain times. It's really kind of learning to pay attention to what is most useful and beneficial for you.
And how long does it take to train the brain to use these beats, or is it instantaneous with the first listen?
That's a great question. Yeah, you basically can instantaneously put yourself into like a different brainwave state, because all it's doing really is on the scans and stuff that we've looked at, if someone comes in and they're really stressed out, their brainwave patterns are like really scattered, and so we can put anyone listening to the beats, and it automatically will start to change their brainwave states within 5 minutes. So in terms of the entraining, like long-term effects, it's just kind of like, you know, I mean, people are using them to meditate, right? So if you're meditating over a long period of time, like you've been meditating for a year every day or twice a day or something, then yeah, you're going to be able to go into those states a lot faster,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And what's the difference between digitally synthesized sounds and, say, my Tibetan singing bowls? Because that's
Sure.
something that I often hear people that love the instruments, and this is funny because this is actually a part of the story that you just told us
Sure.
about yourself. You know, you have proponents that say, no, I only want an instrument, and then other
Right.
people say, why, when you got a synthesizer? So let's answer that for me.
Yeah, I love this question. Kind of a long explanation, but if you look at the different, like Tibetan bells, for instance, like when we talked about binaural beats and how one ear is tuned to a certain frequency, the other one, that's the same thing with like Tibetan bells. Like one of them is tuned to a frequency and one of them is a little bit off, so it creates that ringing. So essentially, the binaural beats are an emulation of that. Why use one or the other? Obviously, if you could take, you know, a bunch of Tibetan bells and like singing bowls and like, you know, carry them everywhere, because each one is tuned to a certain frequency.
Right.
So this gives you the ability to have, you know, loads of frequencies like in your cell phone.
My 40 bells walking around.
Exactly,
with me.
yeah. Like you can't go to the airport and like, oh, I'm just chilling with my Tibetan bells, you know, no big deal.
No, airport security would
Yeah.
have some issues probably.
Totally. So there's that, and then also just because I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's like a digital thing, it's bad. The thing to look at is that just in music in general, like we listen to music where it's been played on a keyboard, and there's like music all the time, like trance music, meditation music, it's done with a keyboard or real instruments. And people feel this state where they're like, wow, like I feel moved. And the reason why is because sound that comes out of speakers, it's literally moving air, and so it moves your eardrum. So when someone says like, wow, that song really moved me, it's because it's literally moving your eardrum. So every time you play a note or a chord on the piano, they're frequencies. So all we're doing is basically isolating those frequencies and putting them into a rhythmic pattern for someone to listen to. So it's you know, it's not so much different than you listening to, you know, a song or something like that.
Right. Now, as I told my audience before, I actually have beats that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you, you know, I filled out the questionnaire and I thought instantaneously I knew exactly what I wanted to work with, right? Because I'm all into my meditation and I'm very serious about this stuff.
Sure.
And so I sent you what I thought I actually wanted to work with, and I knew exactly what it was. And what I actually ended up finding out was that it moved me to work in other areas of my life beyond that of which the beat was created. So what I'm saying is so if I were working on success, for example, what I actually found is that the success may actually start giving me ideas of things that are still related to success, but it was for about maybe personal knowledge, personal information. So it gave me more of a yearning of wanting to educate myself more, which in terms would help me in success. But it didn't happen in the way in which I was expecting. I was expecting it to be like, oh, I'm just going to come up with this amazing successful idea. But in fact, what I found my deficit, as I saw it, was I needed to do something in a particular area with education. And so I wanted to add that up a little bit, and I feel like in terms it was going to make me a more successful person. One of the things that I noticed with my beats is that I use them differently according to what's going on in my day. So I have several times throughout the day that I meditate. Sometimes it's once a day, sometimes it could be 3 times a day. I may decide to work with the exact same beat and listen to it maybe 2 or 3 times because I want my meditation session to be a little bit longer than the beat. Or I may decide to use multiple beats at one time. And so it's just really, I love the fact that I can use it however I'm led to use it, and it's just listening to my own inner wisdom. So that's beautiful. I love that. All right, so you know I love your beats. I think these are amazing. They have certainly taken my meditative practice to a far greater state than I ever anticipated. So if other people want to purchase this product, how can they find this out? How can they get their own set of beats?
Okay, first off, thank you so much. I'm so glad it was so amazing for you. The way they find them is they go to beatsalchemy.com.
Okay.
And we have a couple other products on there too. And right now we're actually doing like a discounted rate, like a special price until we raise the price. And it's called Binaural Alchemy, essentially. So they would go there, purchase it, and fill out what's going on for them currently. And we do 3 customized beats Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, so what we'll do is we'll put all of your information on our website, and you can find that at FengShui-it.com. You'll find all of his contact information so that you too can get a copy of your beats for your meditation. All right, well, thank you again for coming today, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Sounds good.
And now it's your turn. So our Wonder Why Wednesday winner, WWW winner for today is Jason Bellinger. Jason had the question for us, where is the best place to put my bookcase in my home? Well, Jason, if I have to pick just one location for a bookcase, because I have a ton of books in my house, and they're all throughout, various rooms in my house. But if I had to pick one place, it would be the knowledge and self-cultivation gua within your home. And of course, guas are just those sections in the bagua that correlate to various aspects of your life. So like abundance and wealth, or fame and reputation, or relationships. There is one on there for self-cultivation and for knowledge. That is a great place. She is going to be moving perfectly in that area for you to be able to absorb that information and knowledge and be able to use it at the perfect place in your life. All right? So if you have any questions for us and you'd like to submit it, go to our Facebook page and you can make sure and put your questions there. That's where we pick all of our Wonder Why Wednesday winners. And Jason, you won yourself some cool Feng Shui gear. So we'll get that out to you. All right? Thanks a lot, guys. I can't wait to see you next week. A question that I get asked all the time is how to use binaural beats, and my answer has a tendency to elicit strange looks of confusion. My response? Press play. There is no heavy lifting. Your job is to only listen to the meditative track and just sit there. There are no words to process. There's no complicated imagery. Just listen. Now, there is a short sheet of disclaimers that you need to read and accept before you can purchase any of my binaural beats. This includes you're restricted to listening to them if you are pregnant, epileptic, if you're driving or handling any type of heavy machinery, if you suffer from certain eye conditions, and if you are under the age of 26. These restrictions are presented because binaural beats uses entrainment technology to put you in a meditative state easily and quickly. Now, I use my binaural beats daily, and I love the ability to speed things up in meditation. Listen to binaural beats when you want to relax, clear your mind, or get the creative juices flowing. When you want to engage your intuition to help solve problems, and for personal development work such as repeating affirmations and doing visualizations. Be sure to give yourself enough listening time. The brain requires about 7 minutes to entrain or to fall in sync with the audio stimulus. So give yourself at least 15 to 30 minutes of listening time to experience the benefits. You can meditate with your eyes open or with your eyes closed. When your eyes are open, you can focus on things like a candle burning or any other object that'll help focus your attention. Now, beginners in meditation sometimes find that it's easier to just close your eyes. Why? Because it helps to eliminate all the distractions that you could possibly have during meditation. You must use stereo headphones for the frequencies to have the best effect. Why? Because the beats themselves are created in your brain. The word binaural means having two or relating to two ears. It works like this. Each ear receives a slightly different frequency at the same time, and the brain perceives the tone that's the difference of the two. So if I have 210 hertz coming into this ear and 200 in this ear, the brain will process the two sounds into a 10 hertz frequency, which is the difference between those two tones. Pretty cool, huh? So when it's time for you to go into meditation, simply go into a quiet area, grab your headphones, and press play. I certainly hope you enjoy my exclusive Feng Shui at Binaural Beats as much as I do. You can purchase them one at a time, or you can purchase the entire album at once. It will certainly make your meditation go much quicker and easier, and it's totally up to you how you want to engage it. Enjoy your meditation.
Drop the